Yeah, it's funny, kind of the serendipitous nature of your career, right?
Yeah,
Kind of the lead from one to another. Like, again, theater performance from Auburn. You became a cruise ship performer,
yeah,
which is not something that's just gonna show up, right? Like, so tell us how that became a thing. Like, you ended
yeah.
up on cruise ships.
Well, I got my theater degree at Auburn in '89, and I ended up going to work at a small repertory theater, and that contract was going to end in December, and it was about October, and I was sitting there going, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" And I decided to go to Barnes and Noble, and I bought a book with every, I figured, if I'm gonna go to the next level, I need some training. I need to be in front of people. So I decided the cruise ships would be a nice option. To I was young and I was go see the world and sing on a big stage. So I started. I started sending out my promo. I went in. Michael Bolton was huge then,
Mm-hmm.
and he had a song called "When I'm Back on My Feet Again." And I'm sitting in my chair in Birmingham, watching. I think it was Leno, and he came on and sang. And I'm having that woe is me moment. What am I going to do? I've got one more month that I don't have a job. And Michael Bolton, that song just really spoke to me. And this was way before you could really do it. Before there was a lot of the karaoke tracks and stuff like that. I mean, you could get them, but only certain things.
Yeah.
So I went and bought the sheet music, and I went into the Boutwell Studios in Birmingham, and I brought in a piano player, and I sang that song, and then I did a couple of musical theater songs, and I sent it to every cruise line and every agency that hired cruise lines in the country. I went and got a headshot down in Atlanta, had my resume updated, and I sent it out to everybody. And there was a company in Miami, Florida called Miller Reach Productions, a lady named Mary Ann Delaney, and she took a chance on me. She played her, and we're still friends. She said, I played the cassette in the office, the cassette. And she heard me sing the Michael Bolton song and said, I want to hire him. And I had to be able to dance too. And the other people in the office said, well, Marianne, we haven't even seen him dance. She goes, I don't care. Listen to him sing. Yep. So she took a chance on me, and I became the lead singer for the largest cruise ship in the world at the time, which was the Sovereign of the Seas, and doing a musical theater review show and a jazz show. So we did 2 shows twice a week. It was me and a female vocalist, and we had 10 dancers, big production. It was incredible. And in the 4 years I did the cruise ship thing, I was able to sit there because we'd have star entertainers come on board. So I was able to see Vic Damone and Ben Vereen and Shirley Jones and Mel Torme and all these amazing singers come on. And not only was I performing, but I was watching these incredible artists on stage and how they handled the audience and how they talked to the audience. And I got to talk to them and ask them questions. And so I did that for 4 years, which is where my wife is in the business as well. She came on board one of the ships, and she's a dancer. And we had been doing the ships, and we were just done with it. And they wanted to make me a cruise director, and I didn't want to do that. So we kept hearing about Branson, Missouri. Branson, Missouri, and Yakov would come on, and Jim Stafford. Are you familiar with Jim Stafford?
I am, yeah. Wildwood Flower.
Like feathers and snakes, and that ain't what it takes. But Jim had a bunch of hits, and they would talk about Branson, and even John Davidson, that used to host the Hollywood Squares. He would come on with a show, and all these Branson acts. And I kept hearing about this town that was just booming in the Ozark Mountains. And so my wife and I, my buddy James Engel, who was Jim Stafford's music director, also played with Roy Clark and the Gatlin brothers. James invited us to come to Branson with the next break we took, which we did. And he set up an audition for me at Silver Dollar City as the theme park in Branson. And I went and auditioned just, because he knew I was trying to get off the ships, and I got a job offer to MC this show. And my wife got a job offer to be a dancer for this big magician in town. And we're like, wow, well, what do you want to just hang out here? And we thought we'd be in Branson for 6 or 7 months, and we were here for 22 years.
Yeah.
And I got to say Andy
just
Williams.
On a whim. just on a whim went to Branson. I want to rewind a bit to back to the cruise ships though, because I feel like this was a massive, massive time in your life. Not just because you met your wife during this time, but also like we've had a lot of different folks that have had the experience of being on a cruise ship and being a performer, entertainer on a cruise ship on the show, and it's so cool to watch the transformation between an artist before they were on a cruise ship and after, because I feel like that experience is so endearing to your growth, right? Because you did mention, you're asking questions of some of these other artists, but also you're performing 5-6 nights a week, so you can experiment with audiences. You can see what works and what doesn't, and all of that. So you're doing that during the 4 years, right? You're growing as an artist during this time, right?
Yeah, without question. And also, you're emceeing events like Country Western Night. I was the host, and 1,200 people out, on the Sovereign. It was more than that, and I ended up being on the Sovereign, and then they wanted me in the entertainment. I became sports director, and I was also doing my own show. So I was sports director at day, doing shows, and my cabaret show at night, and hosting events. I flew to Europe twice. I brought 2 of the biggest ships in the world, the Monarch of the Seas and the Majesty of the Seas, brought them across the Atlantic. And on the maiden voyage of both of those, and not only singing and performing, but I'm real comfortable talking to an audience, like we talked about earlier. The key is to talk to an audience as a whole, like you're talking to one person.
And there's a lot of approachability in cruise ships, right? You have to be available for the audience.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
You have a name tag on. Everybody knows you every week. There's 2,500 people on the biggest ship when I worked, and now the ships are even bigger.
Yeah.
But back then, the capacity, there was about 2,500 passengers and probably another 1,200 crew.
Yeah, that's called instant extrovert, right?
Yeah, it's not. And you had to learn to work the room.
Yep.
Which is so important. Like, being in theater and being in the entertainment business, I would say is 50% talent and 50% networking.
Yeah,
or maybe
absolutely.
more networking than talent. But it taught you how to work the room, how to make people feel comfortable, how to troubleshoot problems. You couldn't name something that probably hadn't happened to me on stage where you have to just be quick and off the and so man, it's like I would say a cruise ship is a good place for artists to start their career, and a good way to kind of fade out the career. Maybe when you're kind of close to retiring and you want to still perform, you can go out and still do the cruise ship thing. Because the only bad thing about the cruise ship is that it really doesn't further your career as an artist, because you're on this little bubble that leaves port, and you become like you're a rock star out there for those passengers for that cruise. And when you come back to land, I remember, I was like a rock star. I was doing the shows. Everybody knew me. I'd come in the room, people would, and then you go home for 6 weeks on vacation, back to Auburn or Birmingham, where I was living. And I'd go into a bar and
nobody cares who you are. Yep.
Nobody cares. And so at that point I was like, and the ships can suck you in because you make good money. You see the world. You're out there. I was a single guy.
It's hard to get away from that, right? Because it's it's very difficult, because it's like you're eating your favorite food every day, and it's like, so it was a big. I think it was one of the big most. I can't think of the word. It was that aha moment. That my wife and I were both. They're trying to make me a cruise director now because they like that I can entertain, and I would have made good. Cruise directors make good money, but. Again, I was going to say, man, the move to Branson was risky as hell for y'all. Like, it's
big time. Because here I was, and I went from singing in a tuxedo with a 12-piece band behind me, doing Sinatra and Tony Bennett, and even some rock and roll. I did Blood, Sweat, and Tears and all that big horn band, Chicago and stuff like that I was doing. And I go to Branson, and you're starting over.
Yep.
I've been on the ship for 4 years. I had a reputation. People knew who I was. I was making more money. To the point they were wanting to make me a cruise director on their next big ship. And I said no to that, to go to Branson. And the first job I got in Branson, they didn't know me as a vocalist, and they hired me as an MC in this little show. We did 5 shows a day at the theme park. It was called Shenanigans. And I had a pair of overalls on and and a red handkerchief around my neck. And you know, I was a power lifter. I was doing a lot of bodybuilding back then. I still work out and stuff, but not as much as like I was a big dude. And the comedian in the show, he would call me Howdy Doody on steroids. Although I never took a steroid in my life, honest to God. But he said, Bucky looks like Howdy Doody on steroids. So, I mean, and I went to making minimum, you know, and the show ended up closing in October, and they didn't have a gig for me. And the only thing they had for me was to be a street character. So I put on this raccoon costume with a big head, you know, and the bow tie, and me and a guy in a bear suit rode around on a 2-seater bicycle greeting the kids. And then when it got dark, I put on the Frosty costume with a big head. Yeah. And I did that. I remember thinking to myself, I've got a theater degree. And a month ago, I was in front of a 12-piece orchestra in a tuxedo. What the hell happened? But I had to start at the bottom, and I worked my way back up, you know. And when I left Branson, I was performing with Andy Williams. I had a big horn band called the Horn Dogs. We played together for 22 years. And we got featured in Washington Post, USA Today. I mean, we were a lot of musicians that just wanted to burn off steam at night. So
you started as Frosty and ended as a Righteous Brother, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, that's why I tell people I'm like a living testament, you know, and I don't try to force my beliefs on people, but honestly, I'm a living testament of what God can do if you just have faith and you just believe in yourself and you just don't take no for an answer, and you take everything that happens to you as an opportunity to learn and get better. Even if it knocks you down, get up, dust yourself off, and learn from it. You know, Hugh Jackman said one time, I love watching the Actor Studio with James Lipton, and he was interviewing Hugh Jackman, and Hugh Jackman said, I've gotten knocked down more times than I could ever think. He said, one of the people they have Q&A, and one of the students, film students, asked him, said, what's a piece of advice you can give a young person as myself that are just getting into this? He said, take a risk. He said, take risks, take chances. He goes, and be willing to die on stage. In other words, get your ass kicked and get knocked down. He said, because unless you're willing to do that, you'll never truly live and you'll never succeed. Mm-hmm. Well, and you'll never know how much you can actually take, and how it makes you really realize, Chris, how much you love it.
Yep. Well, one thing that's apparent to me,
costume and Branson, when it's freaking 90 degrees out, and you're greeting kids, and you're thinking, but I used it as fuel.
Yeah. Well, one thing that's apparent to me, just looking back at your career and kind of researching the different chapters of it, is you talked about opportunities. Every single step of the way, you were being taught to accept opportunities and to accept every opportunity, and then just to make the best out of it. With just you're able to be versatile, and I feel like that is from all of these different residencies that started with the cruise ships and then went to Branson for 22 years, where you're playing 5-6 nights a week, multiple times during the day, and you have to learn how to be different each show, because you're essentially playing in front of the same people day in and day out, so you have to make things new for them. That really helped you later on, didn't it?
Yeah, you have to give them the illusion. You have to give them the illusion that you're doing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And you know, again, I go back to Bill, because he's very wise, and he said to me, he said, the way he put it, and this is so good, he said, an audience is like a first date. He said, you know, you're going on a first date, you put on your best clothes, you fix your hair up, you know, you want to be funny, you want to be charming, and you want to give your best lines, you know, to go out there. And every audience is a first date. Yeah. And so you find ways to connect, just like, you know, like a girl, I might go with a girl this week and I might go out with another girl next week. They're two different entities, but I'm still kind of using my same rap. And every audience is different. You know, you'll get a laugh in one spot, and then you'll find an audience that's not laughing in any of the right places. You know, an audience is an entity in themselves, but you learn to adapt. And within the first 2 or 3 songs, you can kind of draw a beat on what kind of audience you're dealing with, and what relates to them, you know. And if they're clapping and laughing at everything, then you could be a little bigger and bawdier, and you could push the envelope. If they're a little more reserved, you know, you got to come to them on their terms.
Yeah. I love that, man.